Well, welcome to another edition of Beyond Reason Radio here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA and on my website, beyondreasonradio.com. Hope you're all doing well this Friday night. I mean, Friday night, you have to expect Beyond Reason. And by the way, we have a 2-hour show tonight. We're going to go all the way to 10 p.m. We're going to see if I hopefully don't fall asleep before that. No, I'm awake because there's way too much to talk about. And by the way, I'm joined by Tom Benton producing for me. How's it going, Tom?
It's going good, and you and I being here must be beyond reason. Everybody else is, ready for the weekend, and we're still working. What's that all about?
No, they're not ready for the weekend. They're not ready until they listen to Beyond Reason. You didn't know?
All right, keep dreaming.
and by the way, programming note as well. I am going to be hosting Bud Hedinger Live this Monday. Tom will be with me as well. I'll be hosting Bud Hedinger Live on this station, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. As most of you probably know, I produce Bud Hedinger Live every morning, but every now and then they let me host. They let me sit in the host chair, so that would be fun. And by the way, speaking of the morning show, this morning I did one of my segments that I do every now and then that we call Yaffee World. And it's sort of getting into the mind of the millennial generation. And I posted that segment on my Facebook, beyondreasonradio.com or facebook.com/beyondreasonradio if you want to check that out as well and see what my opinion was. What I talked about, Tom Benton, I don't know if you know this, but the default rate on student loans right now, 27%.
Oh, man.
27% of student loans are in default.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Government's going to do something. You wait. There'll be a bailout.
Well, that's what I said. The prediction of mine is because they've already taken over the student loan industry, so the government's going to bail them out eventually. It's totally unsustainable.
Now, you're the millennial generation. Let me throw something at you.
Yes, the voice of the millennial generation.
That I heard this week. See what you think.
Oh, uh-oh.
There's certain circles in real estate and investment in the investment world saying that a lot of millennials don't like to buy homes because they saw what their parents went through when the bubble burst in 2008. That's interesting.
I didn't hear that angle.
And they have student debt and what have you. The angle I heard this week was also because they don't want the responsibility of upkeeping the yard, paying for that, doing this, doing that, because everything is handed to them now.
Well, I have to admit, I rent a place right now, and there is something to be said about renting because a lot of that responsibility you don't have to worry about.
Well, that's true, but the thing is, rent's going up 3% a year.
Well, that's the thing. Because people aren't buying homes, they're all renting, so their renting prices are going up.
And it's a lot of cases, it's cheaper to buy.
Now, that's true. Now, in terms of myself, I would like to own a home one day. The main reason I wouldn't want to do that now is because I work in radio, and who knows where I'm going to be in 2 years.
Well,
I would hate to buy a house now and have to move in 2 years. I don't want to move. I love Orlando, but...
Which brings up the other thing I heard this week. You saw the worst jobs report that was out for 2015?
Oh, yeah.
There's a list of the worst possible jobs. Broadcasters were fourth from being the worst.
Really?
Yeah. And number one worst job by this career company that rated them, newspaper reporter, worst.
I can understand that.
Best jobs involve mathematician, actuaries, that kind of stuff.
Probably because of the internet and computers, and probably and engineers. You need a lot of math for all those things.
Get some strong math skills. That's what it's all about these days.
I did okay in math.
Good.
But I was stupid and decided to be a broadcaster. Be one of the worst. Thanks for that happy news. It was supposed to be a happy Friday, happy weekend, and now I'm here. But I'm still here because I love this job. I wouldn't still be here if I didn't love this job. So, but yeah, if you want to check out what I talked about on the student loan thing, you can go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/beyondreasonradio. In fact, if you just go to my website, beyondreasonradio.com, it gives you the links to the Facebook page, the Twitter page, the YouTube page. You can get my podcast on iTunes, the TuneIn Radio app, Spreaker, SoundCloud. It's a bunch of places. So just go to my website, beyondreasonradio.com, and you can check all that out.
You're just like Drudge. Links to everywhere.
I try to be. I try. My theory is on this. I'm a little inside baseball for everyone out there. my theory is on this. If I get my stuff just everywhere, when you search for Beyond Reason Radio on Facebook, it'll be everything that comes up. And it's working. It's finally working where
Good.
if you search Beyond Reason Radio, pretty much all my stuff from somewhere is what comes up.
That's
so,
great. That's
a little
great.
marketing strategy. We'll
Sure.
see if it works.
Yeah.
So, and plus it's all free. This is the poor broadcaster still giving it out all for free. You don't have to pay for any of this.
The man with the fourth worst job in the world.
Yeah, that's the new slogan of Beyond Reason Radio. It is beyond reason that I work in the fourth worst job in the world. All right, so the biggest news probably this week was a guy by the name of Doug Hughes, who was a postal man from Florida, of course, decided to fly his gyrocopter with a big post office sign on it that's to deliver letters to Congress. Deliver letters to Congress. Now, unfortunately for him, and this is probably why he should not have done it this way, no one's paying attention to the letters. No one's paying attention to what he wanted to bring attention to. They're paying attention to the fact that a man with a gyrocopter was able to fly it to the front lawn of the Capitol without anyone noticing until he got there. So that's getting the attention, national security attention, and all that stuff.
I read somewhere today that he started in Gettysburg.
Yep.
That's quite a ways to go.
Oh, yeah. And NORAD didn't pick him up. He literally was off the radar.
I wouldn't think that thing would have enough fuel for that.
Oh, I don't know.
Wow.
I guess it does. At first, I thought he flew from Florida. But yeah, he flew from Gettysburg. But the attention that he was trying to bring in his letters to Congress, which isn't getting any attention, is he believes enough is enough when it comes to campaign financing, and he believes in sort of a campaign finance reform. He believes there's way too much corruption in Congress and politics and the Washington machine because, well, basically the Citizens United case a few years back said that companies were basically people and they could contribute to campaigns. So we have super PACs and all this stuff, and the presidential campaigns especially are getting more and more expensive, more and more money is involved, and he's trying to bring attention to that. In fact, I have some of his letter here when he says, let's see, he says, 1, you may pretend corruption does not exist. 2, you may pretend to oppose corruption while you sabotage reform. 3, you may actively participate in real reform. Those were the options that he gave to Congress. Of course, what everyone thinks the real reform should be in terms of campaign financing is we need to reverse Citizens United. We need to limit the amount of money that companies, that people can contribute to campaigns. Now, there's already a lot of campaign finance rules. In fact, one of my favorite writers, Dinesh D'Souza, got in trouble because he contributed too much to a certain campaign in the wrong way. And it can get confusing. So there's already a lot of rules when it comes to that. But I want to know, what is the real problem and what is the real solution? Is the real solution to just limit these companies, these people, these super PACs from contributing to campaigns, these lobbyists from contributing to campaigns? He makes a point, Doug Hughes, he makes a point in his letter that many congressmen or whatever, when they leave office, they become lobbyists because they're already in bed with them. And I get that. That's a real problem. But what is the source of the problem? Well, of course, as anything else, we can learn from history. When did a lot of this start in terms of financing businesses and big people, rich people from these businesses financing campaigns? When did this really start? When did this get really huge? Well, it basically started in the election of William McKinley against William Jennings Bryan. Well, why? And this was like 1898, you had Rockefeller, the big companies, huge companies, Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan. They decided to start throwing a lot of money to the McKinley campaign. Why? Why? That's the question to be answered. Why did they start doing that? Well, they started doing that because the Democrat, progressive, this was the beginning of the progressive era. Thank you, progressives. This is another root of the problem, comes from the progressive movement. William Jennings Bryan started going after the companies. When he was on the campaign, he would make speeches saying, I'm going to break up Standard Oil. I'm going to break up J.P. Morgan. I'm going to go after these trusts. I'm going to go after these companies. Do you hear me, J.P. Morgan? Do you hear me, Rockefeller? Is what he would say and stuff like that. And he would be on the campaign trail basically saying he's going to break up these companies, that he's going to go after these big companies. Of course, we all forget, while we read in our history how all these companies were bad, they were evil, they were too aggressive, they didn't pay their employees enough. We forget that they also increased the standard of life immensely in this country. You know, oil brought light to everyone's homes. Steel changed the face of our urban landscape. Andrew Carnegie, and they made all this affordable. Modern banking was started by J.P. Morgan. So not everything they did was bad. They basically built modern America. But they had a presidential candidate who vowed to go after them. So when I see companies giving to campaigns, I start saying, can you blame them? Can you blame these companies for wanting to do that? So we're allowed to overtax and overregulate these companies and attack them and go after them. This started years ago, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse over the last century. We start going after them, and then we say, you can't contribute to campaigns. You can't lobby for your best interests. See, the systemic problem really lies, once again, in the power and size of the federal government. If the federal government did not have this much power in the first place, if they didn't have this much power to overregulate companies, to really go after them, these companies and these businessmen would have no need to start contributing to their campaigns. Now, I'm not saying that the companies are all innocent. You have GE and other companies that are basically getting off tax-free because they're lobbying Congress. But think about that in itself. Why are they able to get off tax-free? Well, because our complicated tax code can make all these loopholes, and the companies can give to Congress, and Congress can make these rules exempting certain companies. The federal government is too powerful, and it doesn't let the free market work. And by the growth of this federal government, we have made it so that these companies are going to do this based on their best interest. You know, recently we have the FCC talking about net neutrality. Of course, part of that is going to encourage internet companies to try to give to their campaign on which either side they want to do that. We look at the one side and we say it's bribery by the companies, but we forget the other side, which is extortion by the federal government. The federal government gets up on these congressmen, they get up on their pedestals and they say, I'm going to go after oil companies. In 2008, they brought the oil company CEOs in there. And they talked to them and said, we're going to go after him. Maxine Waters said she wanted to nationalize the oil companies. And then, behind closed doors, of course, and by the way, you can get a lot of this information from one of my favorite books, Extortion by Peter Schweizer. I mention that book a lot because I want everyone to read it. He outlines all this stuff. Behind the scenes, these congressmen would go to these CEOs and say, okay, how much are you going to contribute to my campaign? See, they would go after these companies and then say, you better contribute to my campaign, or we're gonna break you up, we're gonna tax you, we're gonna do this, we're gonna hurt your company. If the federal government did not have the power to do that in the first place, we wouldn't have this problem. This is why the founders wanted to limit the size of the federal government. 407-674-1025. Tell me, what do you think is the solution? I'm going to tell you really what the solution is to this problem. And it's not reversing Citizens United. It's not reversing campaign finance laws and changing campaign finance laws. There is a solution to this. I'm going to get to that, but I want to hear your take as well. 407-674-1025. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio with Michael Yaffee, News Radio 1025 WFLA, and BeyondReasonRadio.com. Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio here on News Radio 1025 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. So in the last segment, of course, I was talking about how Gyrocopter Man, when I hear that, I'm like, Gyrocopter Man. It's like a superhero name. Gyrocopter Man. Anyways, the Doug Hughes, who flew a gyrocopter to the lawn of the Capitol building, was trying to bring the attention of corruption and money and campaign finance laws when it comes to politics. And many people in this audience probably disagree with me. But, well, let me just say, many people in this audience probably think what we need to do is have campaign finance reform. What we need to do is limit the amount of money these companies, these businesses, and individuals, and super PACs and so on can donate to a political campaign. And if that is if you have another solution, or tell me what you think, 407-674-1025, you want to call in and give me your take. The point I was making is that a part of me does not blame these companies for doing this, because we attack them, Congress, and overregulate them, overtax them, go after them with new laws, and what they'll do is they'll create laws, have them sit there and wait for the campaign money to come in before they either get rid of the law or send it for a vote. That's what they do. It's extortion is what it is. And so I was saying I don't blame these companies. But what is the solution? Because the problem, the systemic problem that I was outlining, is the growth and the size and the power of the federal government today. I gave you the history lesson of where this all started, with William Jennings Bryan running for president, saying he was going to go after big companies. That's where it all started. So what's the solution? Well, honestly, I think the only solution, and I am not the first host to come up with this, but I think we need constitutional amendments. This has been basically put forward mostly by another host, Mark Levin, who wrote a book, The Liberty Amendments. And he thinks that the state legislatures should start having conventions and get amendments to the Constitution forward to start really limiting the power of the federal government. Now, he has a lot of different amendments that he's pushing for. There's no way they could all get passed. I mean, he thinks that we should get rid of the popular vote for senators. Go back to the state legislatures voting for him. I agree with that, but it's going to be almost impossible to get that through. But there are some ones that I think we could do. One, term limits. We need term limits for Congress. Two, we need to limit the size of these federal bureaucracies. That's where a lot of these regulations come from. Congress makes the laws, but the laws really don't state specifics. The laws basically empower the bureaucracy to do all these things. So what we need is a system in place that puts a check on the bureaucracies where Congress has more oversight and can approve more regulations. I think I read somewhere that the federal registrar, that 81,000 pages of regulations, that's how many regulations are in the books right now on companies and businesses in this country. 81,000 pages. I think the tax code, another thing, the tax code's like 70,000 pages? Something completely ridiculous that nobody can understand, and that's done on purpose because it gives the power straight to the federal government. We have to do something. We have to elect better people, obviously. But constitutional amendments, unless you have a better solution, we have to do something to limit the power of the federal government. And I'm not just saying the executive branch and the president. I'm saying these bureaucracies. I'm saying Congress. I'm saying the Supreme Court. Why is it we need to get rid of lifetime appointments of the Supreme Court? There needs to be term limits on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was supposed to be a co-equal branch, but it's become its own thing above everything else. It determines what's constitutional. No, it's supposed to be equal to Congress and the executive. But that equality is just not happening in many instances in the Supreme Court. It's not happening in many instances when it comes to the executive. We've talked much on this show about how the President of the United States is using his executive authority to override Congress. And I even had a story a few weeks ago on this show how someone was predicting that Congress's role would become even more and more limited. Basically, he thinks the executive branch, the president, is going to do all these things, going to make laws, and Congress will kind of approve or not approve in the background. I think that's very possible.
In other words, we have to pass the law before we know what's in it.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. And even when we pass the law, we don't know what's in it. How long? I mean, it's been what? How many years since Obamacare was passed? Nobody knows what's all in that law to this day. It's too complicated. And like I said, that's done on purpose. It's done on purpose to get more power for themselves. So I think we need constitutional amendments. The state legislatures have to stand up. Something has to be done. But of course, we have a Republican candidate. A Republican candidate, well, he hasn't officially run. He made an announcement on Twitter some months ago that he's exploring the possibility of maybe kind of running in the future. Some long, stupid thing, which I'm going to get to more of those stupid announcements in the second segment. But when you talk about the power of the federal government, what about the power of the executive branch? One way to limit the power of the federal government is the co-equal branches. So they limit each other's power. So you would think Jeb Bush, a Republican, would agree with that we need to have a check, more of a check on the executive branch of the federal government, especially Obama, who has totally abused his executive authority. Well, Jeb Bush was asked about this and specifically asked about the nomination of Loretta Lynch as Attorney General. And Congress has not been approving her. It's been kind of floating there. And by the way, it's Democrats and Republicans who don't like her for different reasons. So Jeb Bush was asked about this, and this is what he said.
I think presidents have the right to pick their team in general. If someone is supportive of the president's policies, whether you agree with them or not, there should be some deference to the executive. This should not always be partisan. The longer it takes to confirm her, the longer Eric Holder stays as Attorney General. Look at it that way.
Okay, so he kind of made a joke at the end, the longer Eric Holder stays Attorney General, and I get that. But we have a president who is completely out of control right now and nominating radicals. He has the right to pick whoever he wants, like he said. But what Jeb Bush is arguing is that the Senate should just confirm them. We just need to let them do this. And you know why he's doing this? Because if he's president, he doesn't want anybody going against his nominations. He's saying we need to stop being partisan and political. Well, his reason is all political. We all know this. But the Constitution gives that right to the Senate because it's another check on the power of the executive branch. The legislative branch, the Senate, should have a check on that power when the president is overdoing his authority. It's not just the executive branch that makes that decision. It's not about deference to the executive. There's a reason why Congress did this. And this is a Republican. This is Jeb Bush, who says he understands and loves the Constitution. Obviously, he does not. Obviously, he doesn't get it, because that is something that is very explicitly put in the Constitution, that they have to be approved by the Senate. These cabinet members have to be approved by the Senate. I mean, I would ask Jeb Bush, not only should the cabinet members, but what about these czars? What does he think about these czars that Obama is just appointing without any approval? Is Jeb Bush going to do the same thing? Well, the executive branch should be able to pick his team. The executive branch should be able to do this and that with some deference to the executive. Well, that's convenient. Since you're about to run for president, you're going to want them to do that for you. No, there was supposed to be a check, so the president didn't just pick radicals that would ruin the country, but they would have to think about the Senate. They would have to think about the compromise. He just doesn't get it. Sorry, I know he's a Republican and he's trying to win the nomination, and we're in the state where a lot of people like him. But I hear that, and I think he doesn't get it. And I'm going to get to in the next segment as well his stances on illegal immigration. Another thing he just doesn't get. This is an opportunity to really vote in a true conservative, because as I've said before on the show, I think Hillary Clinton is completely beatable and can be beaten with the right candidate. So let's not nominate a joker like this. Let's nominate someone who really understands the Constitution. And also, there was another guy who made an announcement today. We'll get to that as well. You are listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 102.5 WFLA, beyondreasonradio.com. Welcome back to Beyond Reason here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, as well. Make sure to go to my website to be able to follow me on Facebook and everything. Just go to BeyondReasonRadio.com. And I'm going to be hosting Bud Henninger Live Monday, so join me for that as well. I am the voice of the millennial generation, the Yaffee generation. I try to be your voice of reason through everything in the world that is, well, beyond reason. And one thing that is beyond reason is how many people are announcing, well, I'm not even sure what they're announcing. They're announcing to announce, and we have a few people that have announced that they are running for president. We have Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and then on the Democrat side, Hillary Clinton. Well, there was something on Twitter that Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas, ran in 2008 as well, said he has an announcement he's going to do on Bret Baier tonight. So he was on Bret Baier, and this was his announcement.
I will announce on May the 5th in my hometown of Hope, Arkansas, what my plans are going to be. And I'll let everybody just say, come to Hope on May the 5th. You'll find out what's going to happen.
So that was his announcement. His announcement is that he is going to announce something on May the 5th in Hope, Arkansas. So it's an announcement of an announcement. So, by the way, later on the show, I'm going to announce that I'm going to host for Bud on Monday. I don't know. Is anyone else tired of this stuff? I read an article somewhere where the headline was Jeb Bush. I think it was in the Tampa Bay Times, actually. It was Jeb Bush, just say you're running for president and get it over with. Please, just say you're running. Ben Carson did the same thing. I'm excited to announce an exploratory committee to possibly run. Just announce. That was one thing I really liked about what Ted Cruz and Rand Paul did, is they just announced. I mean, they had a somewhat announcement a couple days on Twitter, but they just did it. Let's just get this over with. I mean, do you honestly think we're stupid? Like we're sitting there watching Special Report with Bret Baier, and we're waiting for Huckabee, and he says, well, I'm going to announce something. We're like, gee, I wonder what he's going to announce. Well, gee, I don't know. I better be tuned in. He could say anything. No, we know what you're going to do. The sad thing is it kind of works, because we all are going to watch because we want to hear his announcement for president. So Mike Huckabee is getting in the race. And, well, Tom Benson, what do you think? I don't think I've ever asked you this before. What do you think of Mike Huckabee getting in the race?
Long shot.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
He obviously doesn't excite you very much.
No, he doesn't. Not at all, really. I think a lot would depend. His chances would depend on what happens during the primaries. Like if the others, stick their foot in their mouths a lot, and he comes up with some brilliant ideas and gets a groundswell of support. One of the reasons they do this announce business is because when they finally do announce, there's a timeline where they have to implement certain things, open up an official campaign headquarters, and do a number of other things. And maybe they're just not ready to do that yet.
Nah, maybe. Then get ready to do it and then announce.
Yeah, well.
I don't know. It's just become such a circus to me. So who do you think is the strongest right now? I'm going to get into who I think is. But I'm curious who you think is the strongest.
Well, there's some things about Ted Cruz I really like. The fact that he's a strong constitutionalist. There's a few things that bother me about him. I think he is going to come across as a bully. The same with Rand Paul. If he can't control his temper just talking to a reporter, how is he going to control his temper talking to Putin?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Those things kind of bother me.
You're kind of getting into who you like,
yeah.
which is, it's cool, but I want to know who you think could win. Like, who do you think is the strongest right now that could win? Sort of taking a step back in an objective view of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm personally,
it's not good that you don't know.
I'm just not ready to come up with that yet.
Well,
I haven't decided myself, so I can't.
It is very early,
right? And I think for as many people who don't like Jeb Bush, I think he does have an opportunity to get the independents.
and that's what he's trying to do.
Sure, obviously.
I think Rand Paul actually has a lot of opportunity to get independence. He's sort of libertarian on social issues, and there's a lot of Democrats out there who like the Democrat social issues but don't want the Democrat economic policies. So Rand Paul could attract them as well.
And did you ever divulge where Rand, his first name, is from?
Yes, I think you actually told me.
Yeah.
Randolph.
There you go.
Randolph. Sounds like a wizard or something.
That's an old name, yeah.
That's so funny that we didn't even think of that. We were trying to figure that out, and you found that. Randolph. It makes so much sense. Well, the reason I'm asking this is because I want to give you my opinion who I think is the strongest right now. For one, Mike Huckabee, no, he's not. He should have stayed on Fox News. He was very popular on his show, Fox News. He should have just stayed there. He probably had more influence. Jeb Bush, he could be strong. I think he has a lot of weaknesses, especially his last name. It's just a fact. His image isn't good, and a lot of it has to do with his last name. And he looks more and more like his brother every day. I'll tell you, I would not. You were talking about you like Ted Cruz. I would not discount Ted Cruz. I know a lot of people think he's too extreme to bully, but I've watched his campaign commercials. He's kind of flooded them online before really getting them on TV. They're very good. They're very good. They're very well done. They touch at the heartstrings. They're solid. He gets his point across. He's very well spoken. They're very good. So when I see that, I'm thinking he has a chance. When he gets up on the stump and he does these commercials, I think he could do very well. I will say this, though. I think the strongest, who's really going to be hard to beat is Marco Rubio. I really believe, and I watched his speech, and I'm sitting there thinking, he is basically the Obama of the conservatives. He is the Obama of the Republican Party. I mean, his campaign slogan is the new American century. He might as well just say hope and change. I mean, his campaign strategy is very similar to what Obama did to win in 2008. Now, he's totally opposite sides on the political spectrum, thank God. But when I listen to his speeches and I listen to him speak in interviews, the rhetoric that he has about hope for the next generation of Americans, hope for the future and the economy and opportunity, and how he's a minority who came from nothing and this is all, it's like Obama again, in terms of that rhetoric that he's young, he's a minority, he looks good, he speaks well, and he's talking about the future. He's talking about the next generation of America. Like I said, he might as well just be saying hope and change.
He's a visionary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, his policies are definitely much better than Obama, and I don't think, Obama, it was a lot of empty rhetoric where Rubio does have a little bit more substance, I think. But when you're listening to his campaign strategy, it's very good. And you're listening to his speech, and it's very good. In terms of me personally, I don't know if I'd vote for him in the primary. I'm sort of going back and forth between Rand Paul and Ted Cruz right now. Obviously, people know on this show and on Bud's show, my favorite is Bobby Jindal, but he sort of doesn't have a chance, I guess, because his image. He might do better in the future. He still, he does okay. A lot of conservatives like him, but I was thinking the other day, my biggest problem is why I can't decide, and I think why some people could decide, is there's one thing about each candidate that I have a problem with. With Marco Rubio, it's obviously amnesty. He went against his word to support a Senate plan that would have basically given amnesty, but really before securing the border. He's changed his mind on that now, but it's hard to trust him, especially when he's making a speech and he's talking about how the maids, in his speech he literally said maids, yard workers, and there was something else, janitors, how they need opportunities as well. And he's talking to that Hispanic group and possibly a lot of illegal immigrants. So to me, that's saying there's a little bit of code there saying he might do the same thing. Ted Cruz is pretty good on most things. Where I don't see him really on fire a lot is to cut government spending. He talks about limiting government's power, but I don't hear him address the debt enough. I don't hear him address really the spending on the federal government. When he shut down the government, it was more to go after Obamacare. It wasn't that we really need to cut the size of the government. The other thing that bothers me about Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, for that matter, is neither of them have really said anything about the NSA spying, the NSA wiretapping. That's a big issue for me and my generation, and they're not addressing it at all. And Bobby Jindal is another one. He hasn't really addressed it. So the only one who has addressed that is Rand Paul. So Rand Paul, he's good on economics. He's good on the NSA and limiting the size of the government and reforming the tax code. But he's awful on foreign policy sometimes. He has supported this whole thing with making a deal with Cuba, taking him off the terror list, opening relations with them. He's been very supportive of that. He's talking a little bit tougher on military, but he's going to want to gut the military. He probably would have supported Obama pulling out of Iraq when he did, and that's been a complete disaster. So I'm thinking, and I'm like, man, if we could just combine Ted Cruz on limiting the power of the federal government and religious liberty, he's been very big on that, and Marco Rubio on foreign policy, because Marco Rubio has been very good on most of foreign policy, fighting against ISIS, not opening relations with Cuba, going after Putin. And then if we could add Rand Paul and his economic takes and his take on the NSA, if we could combine all those three things, we'd have the perfect candidate that I would wholeheartedly support. But we can't. They're three different people, and they each have one problem that I can't seem to put together. And that's what I'm looking for. And I think there's a lot of conservatives out there looking for that, and I don't think there is anyone like that.
Well, then it's going to come down to this. It's going to come down to who makes the least mistakes in the campaigning.
Yeah, but you don't want to, it's like in a basketball game. You don't want to play to not lose. You want to play to win. So right now, it's tough because I really like Rand Paul on a lot of things. His foreign policy scares me. I really like Ted Cruz on a lot of things, but his whole take on the NSA, he has not really been much on that. He's been very supportive on that, and he's not really much on spending. I mean, I want to combine these things, and I'm just not finding it. So that's why I tend to lean towards Bobby Jindal. Bobby Jindal hasn't said anything on the NSA, so I have to hear what he says, but where is that candidate? I posted this on Twitter the other day, and someone commented and said, you're right. Where is that candidate? I don't know. We need that candidate, and I wonder if he's out there. So right now I'm still that was just an honest stream of thought of where I am right now in this presidential campaign. All right, enough presidential politics for a day. We went through all that. We got the political stuff over with. I found a funny article. I'm sure all of you have seen the new Star Wars trailer for the new movie. Yeah, I don't think Tom, you have to see it. It's awesome. It's amazing. I'm sorry. I love J.J. Abrams, everything he directs. The only reason I'm a little sad about him doing Star Wars is he won't do the next Star Trek movie. Whatever. But there was a guy who wrote in the Times, the UK Times or whatever, that grow up already with this obsession with Star Wars. You're grown adults. It's kind of funny. I have to read that. We're going to get to that next. BeyondReasonRadio.com, News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Luke, I am listening to Beyond Reason Radio. The Force is with Beyond Reason Radio and Michael Yaffee. But don't listen to him. Join the dark side. I never thought I would actually do that on the air, but the big news, probably the biggest news today, anywhere. Every site I visited has had the new Star Wars The Force Awakens trailer that they released on YouTube. They released it everywhere. It's everywhere. And I have to say, I'm really excited too. I didn't really get into Star Wars until I was like in high school. I watched the old ones and I really liked them. Then episodes 1 through 3 to me are awful. The newer ones they made, but J.J. Abrams is directing the new ones. It looks amazing. It has Harrison Ford back and all that. Oh, it looks like it's going to be awesome. So, but there's such an obsession over it this year. I've just never seen anything like it. Everywhere I've looked, every website, no matter what political affiliation, what it's a news or comedy or whatever, all has this Star Wars trailer in it. It's if there's one thing that can unite this country, I guess it's Star Wars. We thought Obama was going to do it, but I guess it's Star Wars. I have to admit, it looks cool. And it also got me to thinking how there's going to be a lot of great movies coming out this year. Not one of them original. They're all sequels. Not one original. We have Terminator Genesis sequel, Avengers, Age of Ultron sequel, Jurassic World sequel. Next year we have Batman vs. Superman sequel. I mean, they're all sequels. So it's amazing. And then we have other ones that are based on comic books, so they're not original because they're based on comic books. So nothing original, but there's still going to be some awesome movies out there. But I found this article, and it was actually posted by a guy named Martin Dobney. Martin Dobney, sorry. It's titled this: Star Wars fans, for God's sake, get a grip. It's only a movie. He's kind of makes an interesting point. I mean, come on, we're just having fun. It's good to be excited about something, but he doesn't think so. No, he thinks it's time to grow up. All you Star Wars fans out there. He said, even though Star Wars episode, what is it? 6, 7? Sorry, Star Wars episode 7, The Force Awakens, isn't due to be released until December. Its trailer was unleashed 8 months ahead of its date at huge official fan convention. Oh man, the trailer was also shown as a simulcast online, and globally grown men starting behaving the way tween girls do when Justin Bieber takes his top off. So they're all screaming, "Yay, Star Wars!" I'm sorry. It's funny. I love Star Wars, but it's funny. Like believers. Sorry, I'm not a believer, so I'm not as familiar with the term. Like believers, Star Wars fans took leave of their senses, gushed adoringly in quasi-orgasmic tones, and posted wildly inappropriate tweets. Some even started dressing as stormtroopers. He's very upset that grown men are just so obsessed with this movie. One adult male tweeted, "I've watched the trailer 13 times, and I'm literally crying." Another tweeted, "I don't think I've seen my wife this happy since our wedding day." Wow, I think your marriage might be a little in trouble there. In fact, she might be happier. Seriously? Perhaps he needs to up his game between... Okay, I'm not going to read that. He's so mad in this article. He says, am I the only man who finds this behavior all a bit odd? Shouldn't grown men get over Star Wars already? He's about to start a war here. He does not understand. All these Star Wars geeks are about to use the Force to go after this guy. Don't get me wrong, I quite like the look of the new trailer. To me, it looks mostly like every other Star Wars movie with only better CGI. Yeah, he obviously didn't watch the first 3 movies. But I don't dislike Star Wars, far from it. I watched the entire box set last summer, which proved to be a lifesaver on a monsoonal July week in Cornwall. My son loved it, but then he's 6. I'll probably see it, he said. He said, the opening line of the new trailer, "The Force is strong in my family," is telling. Because like ginger hair, a Star Wars obsession is a condition that is passed on genetically. He's so mad. But he makes an interesting point. Are we a little too obsessed with Star Wars, with movies? I have to admit, I'm the kind of guy who gets like really hyped when I see a really good trailer and want to see a really good movie come out. I love movies. We're just having fun, man. They're just let people have fun. Let them get rid of all the negativity in the world and the news and out there. Just let them have fun and be excited about their Star Wars. It's not that big a deal. They're still adults. I'm sure there's a good message in the movie. I mean, come on. It's just bringing them back to their childhood. You don't have to be so negative. But he he says, and that's why, sorry guys, I'm just not feeling the force with Star Wars anymore. I'm telling you, he's starting a war. He's starting a war. By the way, there's a funny video out there. They take Matthew McConaughey from the movie Interstellar, and and it makes it seem like he's watching the Star Wars trailer. So he's reacting as the trailer's playing, and he starts crying and getting emotional, and then happy. You have to YouTube that. It's hilarious. It's called the best Star Wars reaction ever, or something like that. Oh man, what I'm really excited about though is Jurassic World. I am just the biggest Jurassic Park fan, and Jurassic World's going to be amazing. Okay. Anyways, back on to serious things, I guess. We don't want to offend him too much. Next hour, I have to talk about what is compassionate. Is it compassionate for Florida to expand Medicaid? Is it what Jesus would want us to do? Well, some think so. I'll answer that question in the next hour. Beyond Reason Radio continues then.
Well, I found some kind of conviction. Well, I've been there.
Well, yes, don't be too shocked. It's just another hour of Beyond Reason Radio. You're on News Radio 102.5 WFLA and still on AM 540. And after this hour, if you missed me, you can hear me host Bud Hedinger Live Monday at 6 a.m. So there's just plenty of Yaffee to go around. And speaking of Bud, plenty of Yaffee to go around. This is the voice of reason that sifts through everything in the news that is beyond reason. So the question I have for you this hour is, what is compassion? What does it mean to be compassionate? You're going to wonder why I'm asking that in a minute. But compassionate. 407-674-1025. Is it compassionate for those in Washington or those in the Florida Legislature to expand Medicaid, for example? Is that what it would be, compassion? Do the lawmakers need to be compassionate in thinking that's what they should do? Expand Medicaid in Florida, basically cementing Obamacare in this state. I talked about why we shouldn't do it, but maybe I'm just heartless. Maybe I'm just cruel. By the way, this is Michael Yaffee, if you didn't know. I don't even think I said my name, but maybe I'm just cruel. And the reason why I bring this up is because a local pastor of a very big church, which I've been to, he seems like, and by the way, his pastor seems like a nice guy. I don't know him personally, but Joel Hunter is his name, pastor of Northland Church. And usually I wouldn't criticize, go out and criticize what pastor says, but he decided to put a column in the Orlando Sentinel on a very political issue. So if he's going to do that, then he has to get ready if I think he's wrong, which he is. But he makes the point that, well, here's some from his article. As a pastor of a Central Florida church, I hear daily from many of those I serve about the problems they face. Okay, what are you doing about it? I'm sorry. But few stories are more moving and demanding of compassion than those of people living under the darkening shadow of chronic illness. I'm talking at the heartstrings. And then he gets into examples. And he says there is an estimated 800,000 working poor Floridians who are unable to get health care insurance. It doesn't have to be that way, though, he says. Remember, this is a pastor, and he's getting into compassion. And what would Jesus want the Florida legislature to do? He says the Florida legislature can act now, opening the doors of hope and healing for low-income workers, creating jobs, keeping Florida tax money in the Sunshine State, and boosting businesses by approving a single Senate healthcare expansion bill. Okay, the government spending more money on an entitlement program is going to help create jobs. Okay, whatever. He says the free market solution being pushed by Senate President Andy Gardner, an Orlando Republican, would also control healthcare costs for all insured Floridians. Okay, so good. Let's support that. How about we do that? But no, he wants the Florida Legislature to support expanding Medicaid. Expanding Medicaid in Florida. He says, lawmakers, this is your moment. Gardner and other senators have shined a light on a path we need to follow to ease the pain and fears of thousands who are without health insurance. I pray Governor Rick Scott and House leaders, who so far have refused to consider or propose their own health care bill, will find the compassion to stop the suffering of so many less fortunate Floridians. Then he cites a verse. I ask them to remember that from everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. Now, he got the verse wrong. That was from Luke chapter 12, verse 48, and he said Luke chapter 12, verse 28. He says, we are all called to serve others. What an opportunity our lawmakers now have to answer that call on our behalf for the good of the most vulnerable among us. So he's using the Bible here, using the pulpit, and saying it would be compassionate for the Florida legislature to act now, expand Medicaid in Florida, and basically provide health insurance, a type of health insurance, for people who can't afford it. Pass a plan to expand health care coverage. Let me ask you something out there in the audience. Is this what Jesus would want us to do? I mean, that's the question, because that's what he's implying here. He's implying that this is biblical, that this is what it means, that the Florida legislature, the government, should pass a plan that expands health care coverage for the poor, and they should do that to be compassionate because they should serve others. But is that really compassion? Because what really happens in that situation is you have the government forcibly taking your money through taxes, giving you no option on what you're spending on it. They take that money, and of course, much of it is wasted in the federal bureaucracy, let's be honest, and then giving it to others. When you talk about the Florida legislature needs to be compassionate, they're not the ones that being compassionate. They're not doing anything. It's not their money. It's not their personal own money. They're taking someone else's money and being compassionate with somebody else's money. Is that what compassion is? Is that what Jesus taught in the Bible? I can't find it in there. I can't find it where Jesus was saying that the government should be taking from some and giving to others, redistribution of wealth. I don't see that. In fact, Jesus was often wary of government officials, whether it be in the Jewish government and the Roman government. But, I mean, he did say you should pay your taxes and all that. But that's what I want to know. 407-674-1025. What would Jesus want us to do in this situation? I usually wouldn't bring this up, but this is a pastor bringing this up. This is a pastor calling on the Florida legislature to pass laws and spend our tax money based on what he thinks Jesus would want us to do. I'm just not sure I can agree with that. And so and also I want to get into I want to get into that verse he was talking about from Luke. He said, it's Luke 12:48. From everyone who has been given much, much will be required, and to whom they entrusted much, of him they will ask all the more. But what is that verse in context? Well, it starts in Luke 20. It starts actually many verses earlier where he basically says this. It starts out, "Be dressed in readiness and keep your lamps lit. Be like men who are waiting for their master when he returns from the wedding feast, so that they may immediately open the door to him when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those slaves whom the master will find on alert when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will gird himself to serve and have them recline at the table and will come up and wait on them. Whether he comes in the second watch or even in the third and finds them so, blessed are those slaves." What is he talking about here? What is Jesus talking about? It's nothing to do with the government taking your money and giving it to somebody else. The whole context of this verse is that Jesus is coming back one day and we need to be ready. We need to be on alert and ready for it. "Who then is the faithful and sensible steward, whom his master will put in charge of his servants to give them their rations at the proper time? Blessed is the slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But if that slave says in his heart, 'My master will be a long time in coming,' and begins to beat the slaves, both men and women, and eat and drink and get drunk, the master of that slave will come on a day when he does not expect him, and on an hour he does not know." This is the context of what Joel Hunter was talking about. The idea is that we need to be ready because Jesus could come back at any time. And the idea is that as Christians, we need to live our lives on a daily basis as if Jesus could come back anytime. And yes, we need to serve others. But what did that slave do that did the wrong? Well, he took the master's possessions and wasted it. So there could be an argument being made that the government, if they're going to take our possessions, they shouldn't waste it. But the point isn't even about that. And then he ends it with that verse. "And that slave who knew his master's will and did not get ready or act in accord with his will receive many lashes. But the one who did not know it and committed deeds worthy of a flogging will receive but few. From everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And to whom they have entrusted much, of him they will ask all the more." It's talking about Christians who are given grace and eternal life, but they're required to live their daily lives for Christ. That's what's really we're talking about, that we need to be ready and live our lives as Jesus could come back at any moment. That's the context of what he's talking about. And yes, those who are entrusted much, a lot is required of them. But he's talking to the church. He's talking to Christians. He's not talking about the government. He's talking about the church. Much is required of the church. And those in the church who do wrong and bad deeds, and those in the church who waste money, those are the ones who will be punished in the end. Those in the church who do not follow God's will, those are the ones who will be punished. It's nothing to do with the government taking your money, giving it to expand an entitlement program for those who basically haven't even earned it. I don't know. Let's see what you think. 407-674-1025. John in Orlando, what's your comment on this?
Wow, what a great subject, Yaffee. Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for listening.
Oh, my pleasure. I think a bunch of different things on it. Jesus says that there will always be poor no matter what.
Yes.
Jesus also wants us to prosper and, be good stewards with what he has given us.
Yes.
And that's, the thing is when you take God out and you make the government responsible for the poor people instead of letting the average person donate to charities that they have been good stewards of and look to make sure that the majority of the money that they donate goes to the right places instead of just to their own pockets or their own salaries. I mean, then you are truly doing the right thing.
And he gives the example about how the master, what if the master, in this parable, he gives an example, the master wastes the money, gets drunk, and hurts the other people, and those are the ones who would be punished. Well, there's a lot of argument could be made that the government, by expanding Medicaid, could be wasting a lot of money.
Wow, and with the two-party system and the lobbyists that we have, and the way that even the federal government, K Street, I mean, it is. I don't think they serve the people as the master. I think the U.S. citizens now serve government, and it is absolutely bloated, broken, and when's the last time you heard of anything being spent efficiently by the federal government or the state?
Exactly. And yet he wants the government to spend more. You know what I really would have liked to have seen is if Joel Hunter wrote this article to either his congregation, his church, and other churches, to other Christians, saying we need to help those who are poor. We need to help those who are suffering. We are required as the church to help the poor. But that's not what he's doing.
Yeah, to be an Acts 2 church and actually put faith into motion and do those things. What I didn't tell you is I'm actually got about 3 weeks left of seminary school, and I respect Joel, but I don't go to his church, but I disagree with him on that subject.
Yeah, and thank you for your call. I mean, I respect Joel. I mean, he's obviously a successful pastor. I hope he's brought a lot of people to Christ, but he's making a political statement here. So he has to be ready for the criticism. But the point that I was trying to make is that what is compassion? When Jesus is talking about us to be compassionate, it's compassion. The definition of compassion is not the government taking your money through taxes and then spending your money on something else. We're talking about the Florida lawmakers being compassionate. That's not compassion. The Florida lawmakers don't lose or gain anything in the situation. It's not their money other than the taxes. They pay too, but it's not their money. They're spending somebody else's money. That's not the definition of compassion. It's a convenient. And then it's very convenient for a church to call on the government to take care of a problem. That wasn't the role of government. It was the role of the church to help each other. So the true calling should be individual Christians helping each other. And you don't have to help everybody, but help your family, help your friends, help your neighbor. That's what we were called to do. Not to look towards the government and expect the legislature to pass laws to do it. Russ in Tampa, you are on with me, Mike Yaffee. I'm Beyond Reason. How's it going, my friend? Russ, you there?
Oh, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't hear your first part there.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Russ. I'm sorry.
Hey, I just want to call and make kind of one comment, and that is that I think that government is trying to take over the role of a church, and it's in a lot of cases it's because the church failed to do the things they should have done over time.
I agree with that.
And I think that if the church really understood its role and took its role seriously about helping widows and orphans and helping those that needed assistance, taking care of the poor, government would be completely out of that, and they shouldn't be involved in that.
Yeah, because it's really not the role of government. At least as the founder saw it, it was never the role of government to do those things.
Absolutely.
Because they had the churches to do that. And I think it actually goes further than that. We often look towards the church to do that kind of stuff. I think Jesus in a lot of situations just called on individuals to live your life as an individual Christian with love and compassion towards others. I mean, if we could just start with that, we have Christians now who are not even compassionate to their own friends, to their own family. And then we're calling on the government to bail us out. Why don't we as Christians individually show compassion?
That's very true.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. I really appreciate you listening, Russ. Thank you for your call today. Yeah, and he's right. A lot of it's the failure of the church. 407-674-1025. If you have any other comments on this. So an ESPN anchor woman is in a lot of hot water right now. We're going to get to that and much more next. Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 102.5 W. Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and on BeyondReasonRadio.com. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee, or like my Facebook page, Facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. You can find all the links at my website, BeyondReasonRadio.com. Another something that, to me at least, was beyond reason was ESPN anchor, blonde girl. What was her name again, Tom?
Her name is Britt, Britt McHenry.
Yeah, Britt McHenry. Yes.
With a connection to Florida.
And how is that? Of course there is.
Yeah, there's always a connection to Florida. This young lady played women's soccer or field hockey, one or the other, at Stetson University.
Ah, I see. And I think, and so she got in trouble this week because she was caught on camera at a parking garage. I guess they towed her car, and she went on a little bit of a rant against the attendant there that worked there. And one thing she said, I think, was, I have a college degree or something. So now we know where that college degree came from. What was some of the other stuff that she said?
Well, there's the video is about 1 minute in length, and the thing is, it's heavily edited, and you don't know in the context of what she is saying. In other words, they may have just said something to her that just tripped her trigger, so to speak. But what was captured by the surveillance camera and the audio was she said to the person working at the towing agency,
yes.
She says, "I'm in the news, sweetheart. I will expletive sue this place."
Because you're in the news.
And of course, the employee tells her McHenry
you're
that she's
sports news, by the way.
That she's being recorded, But she continues her rant anyway. She says, "That's why I have a degree and you don't. I wouldn't work at a scumbag place like this. Makes my skin crawl just being here." Sounds like some dates I've had.
Yeah, right.
And later McHenry said to the young lady at the towing agency, she says, "Maybe if I was missing some teeth, they would hire me, huh?" And the funny,
see, you can't be that mean against someone who's just doing their job.
No, and she also said, "Oh, like yours, because look, I'm so stunning because I'm on TV, and you're a expletive trailer, honey."
Oh man!
And out the door, she says, "Lose some weight, baby girl."
Wow.
See, her mistake.
She just thinks she's so much better than.
Well, her mistake was attacking the girl personally,
exactly,
as opposed to the company.
Because she thinks she's better than her,
and,
no matter what she's mad about.
And I don't think this is really a case of her being under stress. I think this is a case of her thinking she was entitled to better treatment because of her stature in the business.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And that's what's getting her a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
She thinks because she's in news. She's in sports news. She's like, "I'm in the news. I can sue this place." You're in sports, honey. Don't look too high. Don't look too highly of to yourself even then, but it's I mean, come on. She obviously my thinking was she keeps talking about how she's smarter and better than this lady, and I'm thinking you obviously ain't that smart because you go on this rant that's going to go public in this YouTube viral era.
Yeah.
And it's going to be all over the place. And you're going to lose your job, and it's going to be very hard for you to find another job in broadcasting. So you might be working in that parking garage pretty soon.
She's been at ESPN for about a year. Before that, she was with the TV station
right.
in Washington, D.C. She did her undergrad work at Stetson, and she went to Northwestern for graduate studies in journalism.
Oh, okay. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, but
she thinks highly of herself, that's for sure.
Obviously. But you were thinking, you were raising in the before the show, you were raising some questions about this.
Well, I don't think we know all the details, and
yeah, obviously we don't.
I've also heard that the towing company in the D.C. area is predatory. In other words, I even read one account where they were towing a car with kids inside. So I don't think they're totally innocent in this. I think they did something to
she's
to trigger her.
Probably mad because they towed her car, maybe for no good reason. And
well, I'd like to know the circumstances of that because that's what started it all, Was she parked illegally or what? What was the case? Maybe she was late on the car payment? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But there's better ways to handle that. And it's kind of like you said, you don't attack the person that works there as she's somewhat beneath you. That's disgusting.
She needs a little compassion, huh?
Yeah, exactly. What she needs is Jesus. Let's just say that right there, right then. What she needs is Jesus. By the way, kind of a random moment. Sometimes I go on these random things because I see something on the TV. Apparently someone was very nice to Hillary Clinton in saying one thing they thank Hillary Clinton for is not getting plastic surgery. So that...
How do you know?
I didn't say that.
Maybe it didn't take.
Tom Benson said that, not me. Kind of makes a good point, though. I kind of think the whole plastic surgery thing on women is ridiculous. Because I have to admit, I don't get why I mean, I get to a point why women do that, but I don't know any guy who likes that look, the plastic surgery, Botox look.
But the guys are not innocent. I mean, look at all the male celebs who have had it.
That's true.
Burt Reynolds, Kenny Rogers. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he looks freakish at times.
Yeah, it's just that fame and everything. So I thank you, Hillary Clinton, too, for not getting plastic surgery. This is the big news of the day. That was on Fox News. It shows you where the news is today. All right. Coming up a little bit in the second half hour of the show, I want to get into some more local stuff. Public employee pensions are just getting worse. And it's getting worse in the state of Florida. And it's completely unsustainable. And no one's going to do anything about it. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and BeyondReasonRadio.com. So she apologized, apparently. And Tom Benson tells me that McHenry apologized for her rant against the parking attendant or whatever at the parking garage she was picking up her car at.
After the world has seen the video, though.
Okay.
Because then there's a reason.
No. I'm sure it was sincere.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was sincere. Okay, fine. All's forgiven. Give her job back. Whatever. Let's not even talk about it anymore. Even though she thinks she's better than everyone else. Although she's my age and she's a successful ESPN broadcaster, and I'm here, so now I'm a little jealous.
People in in our business are so cynical. I know a guy who said, "Well, just give her a little time. I'm sure she'll find a rich man and make him miserable someday."
No, okay. Sorry, I just can't stand. I can't stand people like her. Anyways, another issue that is, of course, Beyond Reason here on Beyond Reason Radio. It's really not getting enough attention, I think. I found this in SunshineStateNews.com. Public employee pensions. Taxpayers can't get a break. Here's a number that you might find interesting. Jacksonville's pension plans have an unfunded liability of more than $2.5 billion. Unfunded liability on their pension plans. $2.5 billion. It's getting a lot of issue in Jacksonville and their mayor's race. It becomes an issue in campaigns. And as this article references, nothing is ever done about it. And you know what's very interesting that the article mentions that I did not think about? It might be a negative effect of term limits, which I honestly didn't think about. Term limits makes the problem worse. For once, this is actually, we often support term limits for members of Congress, members in, state Congress, local legislature, stuff like that. Apparently, in terms of this issue, it actually makes it worse. Because what happens is the politicians pass the bills, then they're out of office before these big pension plans get into effect, and they're done, they're gone, not caring about elections before, the chickens come home to roost, as they say, before these cities go into huge debt. In many cities, the cost of retired employees is more than the cost of those who are working. This is why this stuff is unsustainable. You can't pay people for not working so much that you can't pay for the people working. It doesn't work. It's not how the private sector works anymore. They had to learn the hard way, though. The American car companies had to learn the hard way, and our local governments are going to have to learn the hard way, I guess, unless somebody in these legislatures wake up. But nothing's being done about it. And I really don't see it as a big issue in Florida. I don't know if anything ever is going to be done about it. Wisconsin did a little bit with the teachers contributing to their own pensions, and the teachers went crazy up there. Which is, it's just common sense. You should contribute to your own pensions. What do you think, the state government just has unlimited amounts of money to give you for the future? Especially when people are living longer and still retiring, 25 years before they die. It's silly. But the teachers went nuts, and they're afraid of that happening here. So, of course, the public employee unions are among the most powerful special interests. And they reference in this article, which would be a great idea, you can't allow collective bargaining for public employees because they're bargaining not against the people paying for them, but the lawmakers who are using, once again, other people's money to pay for this. It can't work. They mentioned that this is not a new problem. Think tanks and watchdog organizations such as Florida Tax Watch, James Madison Institute, and the Leroy Collins Institute have detailed the problem, warned of the danger, and urged action to head off a crisis. Collins Institute said in 2011, ignoring the warning signs will only make the journey longer and more difficult. Yet the warning signs are largely ignored. Of course they're ignored. Nobody wants to touch, nobody wants to do anything. But good news. There is a reform bill in the legislature this year that is supposed to reform this. But it actually raises benefits for police and fire personnel. So, yeah, we're going to fix the problem by raising benefits. I think that's not going to work. I look at stuff like this. This is just one example where I look at stuff that is unsustainable. I talked about this morning on this morning's Yaffee World that I do on Bud Show in the morning every now and then, where I talked about 27% of student loans are in default now. It's unsustainable. And yet, there was more stats saying how, like, the University of California, they're going to raise their tuition 5% next year, and they plan on raising it over 20% in the next 5 years. So the student loans are going in default, and yet they're increasing tuition. Tell me how that makes sense. So we're going to expect the government to bail them out, of course.
That's right.
And, of course, this is all created because the colleges know they have that guaranteed money by the government. This is exactly how we got in the housing crisis. These banks, these mortgage lenders had the guarantee, the implicit guarantee from Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae that they were guaranteed by the government. So they would just give out these loans, and it all collapsed. It's all going to collapse in student loans. It's all going to collapse in public pensions. It's all going to collapse in health care and Social Security, and nobody is doing anything about it. Do you see now how unsustainable all this is? We're already $18 trillion in debt. The good news, I guess, is now Japan owns most of our debt. Not China anymore. Japan owns most of our debt. So, yay, I guess that's good. But we look at all this, and it worries me because it's all going to collapse on itself. We are a very prosperous nation. We're used to things, but eventually the burden to pay off all this stuff is going to be so high, they're going to have to raise taxes. And they're going to have to reform these entitlements. If they don't, the economy collapses. Do you see now why I get behind this microphone and I talk about the true role of government? Because I see stories like this locally. And this is role of government, not just, we talk national politics a lot, but we're in the local area now. We're in cities. We're in the state. And they're doing the same thing. And we talk about the true role of government. That's why I got on Joel Hunter's case earlier about wanting to expand Medicaid. Is it compassionate if the whole economy collapses under the weight of this huge debt that's piling on when the states and the national government with these entitlement programs? Is it going to be compassionate when it just runs out of money? When either they're going to have to tax us more or they're going to have to print more money, raising the inflation rate? See, if we understood the true role of government in our lives, it would solve all of these problems. That a lot of this stuff should be done in the private sector, which has the accountability of the marketplace, and that helps fix some of these problems. And the government's not involved in this stuff, so they can actually focus on what they should be doing, which is national security and protecting our rights. Then we wouldn't have huge debt. Then we wouldn't have economic problems. Then we wouldn't have bubble bursting. That's why we get behind this microphone. The true role of government, it's important. It's for the future of the country. We're trying to save the country. And nobody's doing anything about it. We have to convince the people with the right leadership, if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible, what the true role of government is. And we have to tell them and show them the damaging effects that government's already caused and how much more damaging it is going to be in the future. Because it's bad. This is just an example in one city, in one state in the country. That's $2.5 billion with unfunded liabilities to their pensions. How are they going to pay it? I don't know. And that's just one city. So we have the bubble of student loans about to burst, the bubble of pensions about to burst. I'm sure there's other bubbles. I did a story last week on Bud's show about how the home mortgage lenders under Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are doing it again. They're lowering their standards and giving out these loans. Are we going to learn? Sometimes I wonder if we're going to have to learn the hard way. I don't want to learn the hard way, but sometimes I wonder if we're going to have to learn that way. All right, in the last segment of the show, I want to talk to you about an issue that a lot of politicians don't want to talk about, and that's abortion. And a story I found that shows just the hypocrisy and the insanity of what abortion is and how legalizing it is just stupid. 407-674-1025. You're listening to Beyond Reason News Radio 1025 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. All right, I'm going to address something that a lot of the politicians don't want to address. Something that, well, is beyond reason, which is what we address here on Beyond Reason. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, as always. Make sure on Monday, join me Monday morning as I host Bud Henninger Live again, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. right here on this station. By the way, please go to my website, BeyondReasonRadio.com, and it's just the best way to connect with everything that has to do with the show. So if you like the show, you want to connect with the show, just take a visit. Easy. BeyondReasonRadio.com. You don't even have to know how to spell my last name. You don't even have to know how to spell Michael Yaffee, because nobody can ever get that right. So just spell BeyondReasonRadio.com and you'll get there. So that's good. And you'll find out all about me as well. But I'm going to talk about a little bit. I mean, just think about this. This shows just the absurdity of abortion. Republican lawmakers, and I found this from CNS News, by the way. Republican lawmakers in Colorado have introduced a bill that would allow someone to be charged with murder for killing an unborn child, prompted by the attack on a pregnant woman whose baby was cut from her womb. Michelle Wilkins was responding to a Craigslist ad for baby clothes on March 18 when she was beaten and her baby Aurora was cut from her womb and later died. Dinah Lane was charged with the attack on Wilkins and with unlawful termination of a pregnancy, which carries a penalty of up to 32 years in jail, but not for Aurora's murder. So they passed a law in Colorado, Senate Bill 15268, which defines person for the purposes of homicide and assault offenses as a human being and includes an unborn child at every stage of gestation from conception until live birth. But of course, the bill does not apply to abortion. Think about that. So what's the difference here? You have a woman who has an unborn baby, cut it out of the womb, or you kill that baby in some way without the doctor or without the woman's choice, then it's murder. Then that was a life and it's murder, which I think most reasonable people would agree with. It's a growing life inside of her. But if she decides she doesn't want the baby at the same stage, she can go to a doctor, an abortion doctor, and the abortion doctor can move it, basically killing that fetus, stopping its heart from beating. Remember that. Most of them, they have a heartbeat. You know, usually when we think of when life stops, we think of when their heart stops. You know, in the hospital. That's what they're doing. And that's perfectly okay. Please tell me what the difference is. Just the person doing it? Yeah, that's it. That's the only difference. It's considered murder, say, if the dad decides he doesn't want the baby. Let's say it's the dad. The dad decides he doesn't want the baby. It's just as much the father's as it is the mother's, right? The dad decides he wants a baby and finds a way, you know, makes her eat something that kills the baby or does something vicious like this and kills the baby, that's considered murder. In fact, somebody was charged with that in another state recently where, I forget, made her take some kind of pill that killed the fetus or something without her knowing, and he was charged. So let me get this straight. The mother can choose to have that baby taken out of the womb and killed. But the father has no say. Someone else can do it without the mother's consent, and it's murder. A doctor can do it with the mother's consent, and it's perfectly okay. Doesn't that point out the absurdity of the whole thing? Is it alive or is it not? When I ask most people that question, they don't really know. They really can't answer. Even those who support abortion can't really answer that with any direct personal knowledge. They can't say for sure in their minds that it's not alive. So shouldn't we side on the side of life then? Shouldn't we err on the side of life? It has a heartbeat. We talk about, well, it's about woman's rights. What about the right of the unborn child? What about that person's right? The right to life, liberty, and happiness. That doesn't count for the unborn child? I'm sorry. This makes no sense to me. And at least we could be consistent then it's not murder. When somebody else does it, then it's not murder. We need to be consistent. In fact, when a pregnant woman is killed, usually they're charged with double murder. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. We're totally inconsistent in this. And of course, at least the one thing we should be able to agree on is the federal government should in no way fund abortions. But of course they do. There's provisions in Obamacare that do. They supported Planned Parenthood for years doing it. It just shows the complete absurdity of this issue. And all for what? For your own convenience is what it is. Because you made a mistake and you want the convenience of not having to deal with the responsibility of a baby. But I have an easier solution to all this. Keep your pants on. I'm just saying, maybe wait till marriage. We're not allowed to say that anymore. We're not allowed to say abstinence anymore. No, it's totally impossible. Why not? You want to really solve the problem of unwanted babies, don't have sex until you're ready to have a baby. Just saying. How about we side on love? I often say I'm pro-love. Love for the baby, but pro-love that you don't have sex till you're married and you're truly in love. That would be the way to go. But no, because our society and our culture doesn't believe in this kind of stuff anymore. Now we have to go through laws where it's murder in some cases, not murder in some cases. It's completely ridiculous. Makes no sense to me. So this is where we are. This is where we are. So I thought I would just share with you the complete absurdity of that issue. Okay. But I have good news. I've decided to end the show with the breaking news. I just saw this on Twitter. This is breaking top-notch news. We need the Fox News sounder or something. Breaking news from the Fox News. Thank you, Tom Benson. Good. The Ben & Jerry's ice cream burrito is really, truly happening. I kid you not. This is breaking news for today. I found this on Twitter, Time Magazine. Ben & Jerry's, the popular ice cream place. You know you want one, Tom Benson. You know you want one. The burrito, the ice cream burrito is truly happening. Now, what do you think? What do you think they would call this burrito? You have no idea, do you?
No.
You'll never guess
An
what
ice
it's called.
cream burrito, okay.
It's called the burrito.
Oh.
Get it? Because you're cold. It's called burrito.
Cool.
I'm not joking. This is a legit news story. It's breaking news on Twitter right now. With a soft and chewy waffled crepe-like wrap enveloping 2 scoops of any Ben & Jerry's flavor, cookie topped with fudge and chocolate cookie crumbs. The burrito sounds like a treat for any day of the year, but it was no accident the Ice Cream Kings chose April 20th, also known as National Munchies Day. Oh my gosh. This is the invention of the century right here. Forget the Apple Watch. Ben & Jerry's has come up with the invention of the century, the burrito. Unfortunately, though, you won't be able to grab a burrito from your local convenience store at 1 a.m. mid-Netflix binge. Freshly made burritos will be available exclusively at the company scoop shops. I can't buy it at the store? I have to admit, I kind of want to try one. I know a lot of you out there want ice cream right now. I kind of want ice cream after this show. I might go get ice cream. So I gotta find a Ben & Jerry's and get a burrito. It's kind of like first Taco Bell comes up with breakfast burrito stuff, and breakfast tacos, and now we have Ben & Jerry's. So technically, you could have burritos for every meal of the day. You could have a breakfast burrito in the morning, a regular burrito for lunch and dinner, and a burrito for dessert. That is the good news of the day. See, you can't say I'm all negative on this show and it's all politics. I have the top breaking news of the day, and this had to be the top story. So I just thought it was very important that you all know that the burrito is coming. Thank you guys for listening today. I really want you to go to my website, beyondreasonradio.com. It's your way to connect with everything dealing with the show. Make sure to like the page on Facebook, facebook.com/beyondreasonradio. I want to get to even more likes, and I'll be back on Monday hosting Bud Heading Live on this station, 6 a.m. So, well, you better be there. It could be more breaking news. Who knows? Maybe Cold Stone Creamery will come up with some kind of new ice cream concoction. Then we will break all 3 hours and talk about that. Thank you guys for listening. See you guys on Monday.